Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our mini-series on creating custom resource objects like constructions and schedules and programs. And in this particular video, we're going to learn how to save those constructions and schedules and programs that we've created with the Pollination Rhino plugin into our user standards library, so that this way we can actually reuse those programs or those construction sets across several different models that we may make with the Pollination Rhino plugin. So just to recap what we did in the previous two videos, we created a custom construction set. And again, these were based on my own experience of what I would have done in practice. We created this basis of design construction set for Climate Zone 5, which was typical of what I would find myself doing over and over again back in practice when I worked at an architecture office where we designed a lot of laboratory buildings in Climate Zone 5 in and around Boston. So we have this custom construction set, this basis of design construction set, and what else? And we also created in the last video a custom program type for a biology laboratory, and we customized the ventilation of that and the set points of that to reflect what I would have typically done on a biology lab, at least, a high research grade biology lab where we would have controls for humidification and dehumidification, right? And this is a humid scenario. That's what the FH stands for there. So, all right, so in this video, we're going to take these resource objects that we built, and you see right now, right, these are saved as part of the model. These are actually written into the 3DM file that I have open here, this BOD standards file. And we're going to take those and save those into our user standards library, which is something not too dissimilar from these other sources here, right? This DOE NREL source, this LBT source. All right, so this is going to be in a library that we could reuse across several different models that we open up in Pollination Rhino. So to get us started here, it's pretty straightforward to do this once you have a 3DM model like this BOD standards file that has resources you want to save into your library. All that you have to do in order to add those to your user library is I can now go to the very bottom of this little menu under model resources, and you can see there's a tab here to save to user library. And if I just click on this right now, it's basically going to take all those objects, all those schedules, the constructions, the program types, and it's going to embed them into my user library. And you'll get a full sort of readout of what was and was not added. So you can see, right, so most importantly, we find all these objects that we created in the last couple of videos. Those have been added to our standards library. So we have like that ventilation schedule we created in the last video, these humidification and dehumidification schedules. We got the program for the biolab. We got this triple pane basis of design Viricon class, right, in the construction set for us. Those have all been successfully added to the user standards library. Now you see almost every time that you run that kind of command, you're going to get like a message back saying that all these things were not added because they already exist, right? And that's just because, you can see a lot of these things were automatically added to the 3DM model when you start it. These are all just those generic, construction sets and modifiers that ship with Ladybug tools, right? So this is just letting you know that they were not overwritten in your standards library, right? That these have just been, they're kept the way that they are. But right in this case, these are all things. None of these are things that I actually created in the last couple of videos, right? This is just for my information. But you may want to pay attention to this, especially if you find yourself like, editing and remaking schedules and programs and stuff, and you want to rewrite those into your library, right? If those already exist in your library, you're not going to see them show up under this successfully added section. They're going to be under here. So just bear in mind and pay attention to that. So once I've done this, I can hit OK. And right at this point, actually, I've added everything into the user standards library. So what does this mean? So I can X out of Rhino right now. Right, I'm going to close out of this, and sorry, that's the window I had open from earlier. And I can open up a completely fresh instance of Pollination Rhino here, right? So this is one that doesn't have any of those programs that I created, doesn't have any of those construction sets embedded within the 3DM file. And you see, once this opens, we'll actually still see that those resources that I added are available, and they're there because I have added them to the user standards library. Okay, now that Rhino is open, you can see, right, I can go over into my, let's say, my library of program types. You'll get a menu popping up that is very similar to what we've been working with already, right? This is just the program manager. It's going to give you, right, all the programs we ship with Ladybug tools, right? These generic office programs, as well as all these like DOE NREL programs. But if I scroll down to the very bottom of this list, right, you will see Now there's a new program that was not here earlier, that would have not been here earlier, right? And this is that biolab that is now, you'll see the source is user, right? So this is indicating that this has actually been saved to my user library. Had this been a part of the model, right, and not a part of my user standards library, you would have seen the source would have been model. Right, so this is showing us, basically proving to us that we've added this into our library that we can reuse now. Basically, anytime we open up Pollination Rhino plugin, Biolab default FH1 BOD is going to be available as a program that I can assign to any building that I want. Right, and similarly, if I go over to my construction set manager, right, we're going to see that in addition to all those default generic construction sets and all those NREL specific construction sets that we get, if I scroll to the very end, now we have something from our user library, right? We have this basic design climate zone 5 2019. So just to show you in principle, like how this would work, I actually have, let's say, a small sample model here where we can say I want to be able to apply the programs to this particular model. This is really just, for example purposes, this is the sample Revit model that you see it's used in a lot of our tutorial videos, right? But I want to use this as a case in point to show you, right, that I can now apply these construction sets and these schedules to a given model. So you can see right now, let's see, if I look, all these have that default, generic Climate Zone 5 construction set that we ship with Ladybug Tools. And if I were to color all of the rooms based on that construction set, right, you see that's sort of what we have here. If I were to color things by their construction, right, we see that give me a second here, we're just going to select construction, right? You see all these constructions that we have assigned here. These are those, that double pane construction that is compliant with the code. All right, it's got a U value of 0.38. Looks like in IP units. If I want to know what that is in SI, I could just color all these objects by their U factor, right? And that will show me essentially, right, these windows. You can see actually the skylights are different than the other windows, right? And they're both around like 2.8 or somewhere between 2 and 3 watts per square meter Kelvin. So now if I were to go, I want to say all of these should have that Viracon basis of design glass that I created in the previous videos. I can select all my rooms here, say edit properties, and I'm going to change the construction set from this generic Climate Zone 5 steel framed one. I can go down all the way to the end of my list where I have my user basis of design Climate Zone 5 construction, hit OK, right? And now I'm actually applying that construction set to this model. And lo and behold, right, all the windows, including the skylight, now have this much better U value, right? This is a much lower U value, around like 1.3 or 1.4, right? And that's because we built this construction set with that nice triple pane basis of design, right? And certainly if you wanted to check the name of that construction, right, if I go over to this, you can see, yeah, here we go, construction triple pane BOD Viracon VE12M. This is that custom construction and the custom construction set that we made in the previous video. All right, so this gives you a sense of how to actually apply, right? Once you have it in your user library, you can apply it to different models like this. Maybe I'll just do the same thing for give you a sense of the programs. I'm going to color all these by the program type. And you can see, right, I have 3 rooms in this model that have that really generic laboratory with fume hood that has none of the sophisticated ventilation controls that we put into the one that we wrote in our user standards library. So just to give you a sense, right, I mean, maybe I'll even cover these with the ventilation per volume, right? You can see this is 15 ACH in these rooms, right? Way more than ventilation than I would have used, or I used in my example, for instance. Oh, and really importantly, let me color them with the ventilation schedule, right? You see none of these have ventilation schedules. None of those have those controls. So let's say I select these 3 rooms that I know are laboratory, and instead of just having this really generic lab with fume hood, oh, let me do that again. Select the 3 of them. Right, I can go to PO, edit room properties, and I can then change this from this generic lab with fume hood over to that nice custom BioLab program that I made. I can hit OK, right? And now we can see, right, okay. Well, the colors didn't change here, but you can see, right, the BioLab ventilation fume hood is showing up here. Maybe if I were to change the colors, maybe I'll just change this to original Ladybug, right? And we can see, yeah, there we go. Right now I can clearly see that these sophisticated or slightly more sophisticated ventilation controls are applied to these particular laboratory buildings. Right, and I can go back to coloring based on program. Sure enough, it should show us that, yeah, this is Biolab default FH1 scenario, right, instead of that generic one. So this gives you a sense, right? You can essentially build these custom resources that you imagine reusing across several projects. You write them into your standards library, and then you're able to apply them to all the models that you may be building, right? So that's the general idea with the user standards library. These are the things that you're going to apply over and over again in your office. And maybe just to show you one more advantage of writing things into your user standards library, I'm just going to bring up Grasshopper here. I know not everybody watching this video series is going to be user of Grasshopper, but I mean, just so that you're aware that this is a capability. When you write something into your user standards library, you get the ability to assign programs in Grasshopper just using the name or the ID. If you guys remember, we set that. You can assign that just using the ID of the program without needing to actually create the whole program from scratch in Grasshopper. So just to give you a really quick sense of how that works, let's say I'm gonna bring in a couple of rooms here. Let's see, I'm gonna use this PO room parameter. I'm gonna set one room, and let's say we're just gonna change this room over to use the program of let's say our default FH1 BOD. And all I have to do if I want to apply a program to this, if you guys remember, if you were doing this in Grasshopper, you probably have to create your own like custom program using this component here, right? The HB program. When you're working though, when you have something written in your user standards library, all that you really need to do, you can use, let's say, this HB apply program type component. You can plug in your rooms you want to apply that program to, and you just need to assign the ID in order to apply that program to that. So in this case, the ID would be biolab with a dash default fume hood 1 and then BOD, right? And you can see actually just by using this text inside a panel, I can apply that to the room here. And if you want to just double check to make sure that you've assigned the program correctly, you could always use, let's say, use this color room by program type, this component. And I'll just turn the preview off here. Let's see. So we don't get things on top of each other. We don't get the Grasshopper and Rhino on top of each other. And I'll plug in the room here. I'll plug in an attribute. I want to check let's say the program, right? I can plug this in here and you can see Biolab default FH1. That is assigned basically just using this ID. And I can do this right because this is something in my library. So basically Grasshopper and Ladybug Tools plugin for Grasshopper already know what you mean by this, right? Because it's already in your user standards library. I couldn't do this if this were just something that were inside the model here. Just to prove, right, that this is actually working, right, when I take the room straight from Rhino Grasshopper, it has this office program. I pass it through this component where I'm just using this ID and I'm able to assign this program to it in Grasshopper. Right, so this gives you a general sense. These are the perks of having something built up in your user library. Maybe I'll just show you one more capability quickly of this. I'm just going to X out of this Grasshopper window here, right? But I just want to show you guys quickly when you save these, let's say if I save this model to an OSM, this little sample model, a Revit sample model here, I'm just going to go over to our Save As menu, and if I have the Pollination Rhino plugin, I can just select Open Studio Model. Now let's save this to my desktop here and give this a second. Okay, so that took a few seconds, but it said file successfully saved to an OSM. Right, and I just want you guys to be aware, I can open up this OpenStudio model, this OSM, inside the OpenStudio application, and you guys will actually be able to see the construction set and the program type that we have from our user standards library. This is actually inside of the Revit sample model here, right? So we have this basis of design, Climate Zone 5 2019. This is that one we created, and it's actually translated into an OpenStudio construction set, as you see here, right? One thing I do want you to pay attention though is that if I were to go over to the construction tab here, right, this esoterically named construction here, this is actually that Viracon basis of design triple pane construction that we've created. So you see by default, this is what I mean by ID, right? This is a unique ID that was originally generated. In the case of our construction, our Viracon construction, we didn't actually, we might have changed the name to be equal to basis of design Viracon VE12M, but we didn't actually change the ID to be that. So I just want to show you guys quickly, if you do want the ID to be generated from the name that you have for these constructions, what you can do, I'm just going to close this for a second. You can always go over into your Rhino tab here, your Pollination Rhino tab, and under Model Resources here, we have a little section called Reset Resource Identifiers. If I select this, what this is going to do, it's going to regenerate the IDs of all those resources in the model, all those constructions and materials. It's going to generate them based on the names. So I would only use this if you've been certain that you've uniquely named everything in your model. But once I do this, if I go save as, I'm going to save this to an OSM again. We'll overwrite the existing model and give it a few seconds. Okay, and that file saved successfully, right? And now if I open up this new version of the OSM, we'll be able to see that the names of that Viracon construction, that's no longer going to be that unique ID string. Right, again, we have base of design construction, but actually you could already see, right, our triple pane BOD, the name of this construction here is, right, this now is generated from that name, that display name. As is the name of the material, right? This is that simple glazing construction that we've created here. All right, so that gives you a sense, right, of how you can add things to your user library, how you can apply them to your models, both in the Pollination Rhino plugin and in Grasshopper, and how you can reset the IDs of things to make sure that it's readable in the Open Studio model, if you so desire. In the next video, we're actually going to talk about how you can edit your standards library, right? Because you may make a set of constructions and programs and then realize that you may need to change them. It's not exactly what you were hoping to make. So that's what we're going to cover in the last video of this mini series. Thanks for sitting through this one, and I look forward to seeing you then.